Good day, everyone. I'm Paul Mirabelle, Chairman of the Research Support and Prevention Committee at Duarte. Very pleased to have you join us for what is our third webinar into the series, Cancer Doesn't Sleep and Neither Do We. And as always, raising funds for cancer research and prevention remains our #1 priority at Duarte. One of the things that we've been looking to do through these seminars is basically share with the community the perspectives of some of our research colleagues at the various organizations that we support. And today we're joined by two researchers from the Olivia and NewtonJohn Cancer Research Institute in Melbourne. Professor Matthias Ernst, who's the director of the Institute and specializes in gastrointestinal cancer. He's also the head of the School of Cancer Medicine at La Trobe University. We're also joined by Dr. Jessica Duarte, who's a postdoctoral research fellow working in immunotherapy. And some of her work has been supported by TDC over the last few years. We've had a long-standing relationship with the Olivia Newton-John Institute, and we're a very proud supporter of their ambition to understand how cancer works and then converting it into a manageable disease. And we're thrilled at some of the outcomes, some of the previous projects that have been supported through ONJ. This has included a project with Dr. Belinda Yo in the translational breast cancer team to study a subgroup of those presenting with metastasized breast cancer, where the spread is minimal, but with the aim to improve treatment and survival outcomes. And the initial project that Jessica has been leading, which is successfully investigated an antibody-based early detection screen, which she designed, and is now being investigated across more cancer types. It's this type of work which motivates everyone within Duarte. We're very pleased to have both of you on this call, so thank you for joining us. So let me just start with just a general question. Obviously, everyone across Australia is working under different rules and different conditions than what used to be the case even 6 weeks ago. How's it going for you two? Jessica, maybe I'll start with you.
Okay, in my case, hi everyone, first of all. In my case, I have been working from home full-time since the restrictions began, so I would say a month and a half now, at least. And at the beginning it was quite difficult to adjust to the new environment, but yeah, I guess now I'm kind of used to it, and I don't mind it too much actually. So yeah, essentially mainly working from home entirely at the moment.
How about you, Matthias?
Well, first of all, thanks, Paul, for having me on your program. Look, I guess for the Institute, it was very important from the beginning that we send out a message that we really don't close the Institute. We continue our business, we just do it somewhat differently. And I guess for many of us, in fact, it was an opportunity to be a little bit separated from the actual wet labs where we do the experiment, to give us some time to not only write up all our discoveries and get them published, but also think about new ideas. So in a way, it was probably not too unwelcomed. Having said that, of course, you know, the longer this, I guess, lockdown drags on, the keener people get to go back to the lab, because there's really only that much that you can do from your home office, you know, even if it's cozy and you have your pets running around and you know, your spouse bringing you coffee every day. At the end of the day, we need to go back into the lab. And I think now we are probably at the stage where we can do that. Probably in the next 1 or 2 weeks, a sort of a staggered way of coming back and really making sure that we can adhere to all the distancing rules.
I get the pets bit. You're going to have to give me some tips on how I get my spouse to bring me coffee, though.
Depends on how much Duarte pays, and then I'm very happy to share those tips with you.
Could be, you could have some incredibly valuable information for all of us there, because it sure doesn't work that way right now. One of the things which it's probably, it's a useful time given the broader community that's going to be listening to this. Maybe just explain a little bit about how ONJ is set up. Everyone would be obviously familiar with your patron, Olivia Newton-John, and with her battle and ongoing battle with breast cancer. But the Institute actually has a much broader remit when it comes to cancer research than simply breast cancer, doesn't it?
Yes, that's true. Although breast cancer is one of the main focus areas, and we have actually quite a big program with several groups working really, I guess, hand in glove from the laboratory-based discovery research we do all the way to having medical oncologists involved, trying to, I guess, guide the laboratory researchers towards the questions that really matter in the clinic and that, I guess, matter to them as treating oncologists, and ultimately, obviously, allow them to treat patients better so that the response of the patients is better, and I guess the side effects are minimized. But Paul, as you said, so breast cancer is only one of the streams. We, in fact, have quite a bit of work in other solid malignancies. So we don't do blood-based cancers, and we don't do any childhood cancers. So we really only deal with cancers in the adult. A large program is bowel cancer and also related cancers to the gastrointestinal tract. So that includes the biliary tract, the stomach, and so on. We have a program in lung cancer, we have a program in brain cancer, and more recently we also started a program in, I guess, a whole number of cancers that are, I guess, summarized under the term of rare cancer. So these are essentially cancers that are relatively rare and are too rare as that you could do specific trials because they're just too few of those particular cancers. But now that we understand that cancers, it's not all that, I guess, important in terms of treatment on where the cancers arise, but more the underlying molecular mechanisms. So that allows us to group cancers that may arise at different origins, but are molecularly related, and then treat them in the context of these rare cancers as a larger group of cancers. And in fact, Jessica and some of the medical oncologists with whom she works have been very successful in running a pilot trial, including 120 patients with rare cancers.
Jessica, maybe do you want to expand a bit on the work that you're doing, just building on what Matthias has just described?
Yeah, definitely. So I guess the Rare Cancers project is, although it's not a Tour de Cure project, it is closely related to a lot of the things we do at the Institute because it has to do with immunotherapies. And as Ties mentioned, we've come to find that the immunotherapy treatment, a lot of the studies that we're doing and the findings that we're finding in one cancer and another cancer can in fact be applied to rare cancers too. So they're not really tumor type specific, and they may equally be valuable across other cancers. And so we have a very large project going on with the rare cancer clinical trial, a lot of biomarker studies, a lot of potential to try to predict which patients will have clinical benefit from these treatments. And in the case where we find that they won't benefit from treatment, then we can spare them these toxic treatments and instead give them something more suitable for them, and that will increase their likelihood of survival. So it's very exciting to be involved in that line of work. Yeah.
Would we expect over the next, I don't know, 5, 10 years that the way that cancer types are described and research is organized will change? It sounds like it's changing already. It's not stomach cancer versus breast cancer versus brain cancers, etc.
Definitely.
You're looking deeper to the source of the disease.
Definitely, and especially looking deeper into the immune system, because I guess most of my work is focused on our immune system and how we can use it to understand what's going on with the patient, how the patient is fighting off its cancer, and how we can boost it, how we can boost our own immune response to the cancer, and how that can be an effective treatment. And how that can give us cues as to whether a patient will in fact benefit from that boost in the first place. So yeah, at the same time, even within the same tumor type, no two tumors are the same. Even if you look at two patients, similar age, gender, same tumor type, same stage, those tumors will still behave completely differently to treatment. So no cancer, even within the same cancer type, is the same. It's more of a personalized approach.
Yep, fair enough. When you, as I understand it, you also have a relationship, Matthias, I may direct this question to you, with the Austin in Melbourne. How does that work? Because I know there's clearly clinical facilities within ONJ. You work hand in glove. The research teams are very closely, physically co-located in many cases, very closely located rather, with the actual wards and such. How does that work, and how does the work with the Austin get coordinated?
Yeah, so look, there's lots of different way to describe it, but I guess one way to describe it very clearly is the fact that in fact we are in the same building as the cancer patients, the inpatients. We're in the same building where the outpatients come for treatment, and in fact we're also in the same building where cancer patients receive, I guess, non-medical support, which broadly can be, I guess, described as the wellness part. So that's kind of if you just look physically at it. So what that really means is that, and that's obviously applied more pre-COVID than now, but pre-COVID, you really had a situation where the medical doctors, the oncologists, would interact with patients and researchers, and the researchers would interact with the medical oncologists and the patients would interact with their family and friends and the medical oncologists and the researchers. So there was really kind of this intermingling, and what that really helped is that it helped understanding each of those groups, what the rest, I guess, of within the cancer community really does and what it needs. So it reminded the researchers that they're not working on just an academic problem, but they're really working on something that eventually will have an impact on the way that the oncologists make decisions on how they treat the patients, and obviously to provide hope and treatment for the patients, but at the same time also for the patients, that some of them are obviously very, very sick when they come into the building. You know, they not only see medical doctors that provide some hope, but they also, we have these big glass windows where people can see into the labs and, you know, can see the type of research we do, and although this is perhaps more my interpretation, I'm not really sure whether that's the case, but I presume that, you know, in the general population there is a very skewed image of what scientists are. They all have very thick glasses and are essentially nerds, and, you know, some of us are nerds, including myself, but if you look at Jessica, you know, you wouldn't really think, but I mean, she doesn't fit that. Anyway, so, you know, what I'm wanting to say is that, you know, scientists are normal people, and they, you know, they respond normal, they respond to needs that humans have, and, you know, they understand all too well what it means if they see a patient and has cancer, or if they see relatives of a patient and has cancer and comes in here. And then I guess if you think in more practical aspects, one very important link, of course, between the hospital and the research institute are our medical oncologists. So these are medical doctors that would see cancer patients, but in fact, they spend some of their time on a regular basis in the laboratory. They don't necessarily do the experiments, but they would interact with you know, Jessica and some of the other colleagues to try to understand what can you do these days with molecular biology or cell biology or whatever fancy other technology we use in the laboratory, and how could that possibly help to solve some of their problems they see when they treat the patients. So, you know, I mean, that various different ways, and there are buzzwords, and of course one buzzword is being a comprehensive cancer center. So that it really means that the research is an integral part to the delivery of care, as is education, because, you know, it is obviously very important that the medical fraternity is continuously educated, because if you look at the progress in cancer, you know, it is amazing. Just if you think about the number of publications that would appear in a year, there are 10 and 10 and 10,000. You know, it's completely impossible for anyone to keep track on what's going on. And so if you don't have this, I guess, environment where there's continuous influx of new ideas and exchange of knowledge, and that's essentially, I guess, education in a different way, then you wouldn't be, or we as a center, we wouldn't be able to deliver the type of treatments that we locally can.
The project, just looking at the sort of outcomes that you're describing there, let me turn this back to Jessica now. The project that we supported you through with Tour de Cure, which involved creating some diagnostic biomarkers. Can you give us a sense in terms of how did that work eventuate? What was the outcome from it? And how do you define success when it comes to a project like that? Because we all know that we want to beat cancer in all its forms. We use the sort of language around here that we're agnostic. We think every cancer deserves to be beaten. But how do you define success? Maybe if you can give us your perspective on that in light of that particular piece of work.
Yeah, so I've been lucky to have received funding twice from Tour de Cure on 2 different projects. The first one in 2018 was looking at the early detection of melanoma onset and melanoma recurrence. And the second one, which was actually fueled by the results from the first one, was looking at improving current diagnostics in prostate cancer. So essentially, we're looking at 2 different cancers that currently have challenges with regards to their detection or their early detection. A lot of times you hear people saying that early detection is the same as a cure. The earlier you can detect a cancer, the more likelihood you have to cure it, the more likelihood you have to get rid of it entirely, and the less chances of it coming back. However, when you detect a few cancers at much later stage, they're much more advanced, you have much more complicated involvement with multiple organs, it becomes very complicated and difficult. The reason why early cancers can be cured is because they can be surgically removed early before they've reached anywhere else. So I'm really motivated by this early detection setting, in addition to looking at a lot of projects in the therapeutic setting and predicting therapy efficacy. Sorry, that's my cat. I'm also
You trained her to do that, didn't you?
I did not. I was hoping she would not during the call, but she does not listen. Yeah.
Well, at least there's no lab mice there.
Very true. Sorry about that.
That's all right.
So yeah, so essentially with melanoma, my first motivation to pursue that project was actually my own. So I had a very suspicious mole, and I went to my GP at the time, and my GP went bright red in his face, and he thought that it was a melanoma. And he got extremely concerned, and he said, "We need to take it out right now." And he did, and he mentioned it was very deep and very large, and he was very concerned, and that he would expedite the biopsy, and that I'd wait to hear from him. And during that week that I waited for a result, I think I lost my sanity a bit. I was doing my PhD at the time, researching melanoma, funny enough. So
you perhaps knew too much.
I knew too much, right? And exactly when I was writing my literature review for my PhD, I saw a few photos of melanomas, and that's when I decided, oh, this mole actually looks a bit suspicious. So yeah, so it was a whirlwind of anxiety, and I was terrified to get that phone call and to come back. And I was lucky. I was among the lucky people that do in fact just get that diagnosis of saying, you got it just in time, all good, it was taken out, we don't need to do anything further. And I was shocked by how even those with a lot of experience often struggle to distinguish between a benign mole and a malignant mole, whether a mole is just that or whether it's cancer. And once I moved to Australia, I had a second scare where I had a mole, this time on the sole of my foot, funny enough, and even a very highly trained dermatologist who, it's a cancer clinic, skin cancer clinic, she equally found a second mole where she was convinced it was melanoma too. And after resection, again, it came out as not being melanoma. So I guess I was extremely puzzled how the front line of defense, which is, these highly developed techniques and softwares and machines that can detect a cancer, could fail. And that patients were going through this whirlwind of emotions and thinking that they had this diagnosis, and in fact they didn't. And so I was very much motivated to make a difference in accurate diagnosis, accurate detection. And so during my PhD, I developed a platform that essentially gives you an idea as to whether your immune system has seen a cancer and reacted to it. If your immune system is aware that a cancer is present, it triggers a sort of immune response that I can detect with this technology. And so as a way, I'm obviously looking at your immune system, but I'm seeing whether your immune system has seen a cancer. Doesn't even matter what cancer type at this point, just whether or not a cancer is present. And so we got some really, really exciting findings in melanoma. We got a validation cohort to validate those exciting findings. That data is currently being written up for publication as we speak, and that's what I would deem as a successful story, successful validation, and successful publication. Once you go through that peer review process where everyone, the scientists in the field, have gone through your work and believe that it's true and worthy of publication in a high impact journal, then you can kind of say, okay, I think this was a success story. When those findings motivate additional studies and you're able to secure funding for an additional project, which is exactly what happened with the prostate work, even more so. And when you're able to excite students to pursue their degrees on that topic, then yeah, that's the jackpot. So all three combined, I guess, would justify. The only best alternative after that would be to test something like this in the clinic. And so work in the process of testing it in the clinical trial format so that it could be introduced into the clinic to actually have a benefit for patients. But unfortunately, these things take a lot of time. So we have several steps to go before we could ever get to that point. So we're going through the steps at the moment with the melanoma project. And with prostate cancer, we've only just started our validation cohort, but we're yielding equally promising results. So we are extremely excited.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's the work is always powerful when you can demonstrate that sort of insights being developed. Thank you for sharing your personal story that's associated with it. It adds that much more gravitas to everything that's going on.
Yeah.
And certainly, you know, if I think about the people that work with us, that are volunteers and so on, invariably everyone's got their own cancer story. If it's not themselves, it's a family member, and these things resonate. They've been exposed to it. They want to do something about it. They can't necessarily peer down a microscope, but maybe they can do something else to actually contribute to the sort of work that you're doing. So that's a really good example, and thank you very much for sharing it with us. Tell me, let me come back to the some of the challenges around research. And Matthias, I might direct this back at you, which is, how do you fund it? And how much of your effort has to go into raising the funds so that the researchers within the various teams at ONJ can actually get on and do the sort of work that Jessica's described?
Look, the easy answer, the short answer is a lot. So, you know, I guess we are all extremely motivated and are prepared to put in long hours, but at the end of the day, you know, we have to pay bills, and in that respect, we are not that different from any other organization. So the majority of our expenditures are salaries, and they are expensive because people just cost a lot of money. And in particular, if you want to attract good people, they have choices and they go to places that suit them best. And if these places can also pay a reasonable salary, and I'm not talking about obscene salaries here at all, then that's what they go. And, you know, it's a free market, so I guess we have to compete. So having said all of that, there are obviously various ways on how you can get funding. I guess the most traditional one is to rely on government agencies. And in that respect, it's very important what Jessica just said. So the government agencies actually rely on our colleagues to assess our work, and they are as critical as we are ourselves. And so these colleagues, you know, they're very nice, but in fact, they're also very, very keen to point out weaknesses and flaws in our projects, and think about reasons why they actually shouldn't give us the money that is required. So this is quite a difficult and labor-intensive process, and at the end of the day, unfortunately, a huge majority of grants don't get funded. It's, you know, anywhere between 85 and I guess over 90% of applications don't get funded. So that gives you an idea on how much time need to be spent. And, you know, it's probably fair to say that, you know, we spend, I reckon, you know, an average between 20 and 25% of all our working time, you know, thinking about writing up grants, dealing with the frustration when the grants don't get funded, rewrite it, send it to another agency, find that they have particular selection criteria that you don't really quite fulfill, and so on and so on. And so this is kind of the bulk. And then I guess there are often people that like to donate money. And that's based much more on a personal relationship between a donor and the institute, or more specifically, a particular person in the institute or a particular activity in the institute. They feel very emotionally connected. And that is important funding, but in the overall picture, that is a minority of the funding. So the majority of the funding is really these peer-reviewed competitive grants, primarily by the government. And I guess luckily the Australian government in that respect is relatively foresightful and has set up this medical research future fund, which essentially puts money away in perpetuity that then can be used to fund research, because it is a fact that you know, funding research is really a long time investment, and you know, every dollar you invest now in 10 or 20 years time pays back a multitude of that $1 you have invested. But you know, it's not like investing short term in the share market. So it's just a different type of investment.
Yes, yes. Well, you've gone so far as to join Tour de Cure as a rider. So you've seen both sides of what we do here. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, look, I mean, I did enjoy, I never really managed to do an entire signature tour, just because it's relatively difficult to find sufficient time just to take off work. But what I really enjoyed is actually talking to the people and also giving them an opportunity to, you know, to better understand what their hard raised money can do and what it can't do, you know, kind of to get a perspective what, you know, some of the bits and pieces of equipment we use, you know, make the price for a new Ferrari like nothing. And you know, getting these type of fundings is actually, it's very, very difficult. And you know, even though you have very successful organization like Tour de Cure, you know, that's probably not quite the right funding mechanism to buy equipment that you need that can easily cost, you know, close to $1 million. So just talking to people that also look silly in Lycra, and you know, giving them an idea what the money can do, and you know, how important it is, and you know, invite them that if they really would like to have a first-hand impression on how cancer research is being done, to visit us at the institute. So I thought that was a tremendous experience, and of course being on the bike, but it goes without saying.
Well, look, it's certainly been, you know, one of our goals over the last number of years is to strengthen the connection between the researchers and the teams within ONJ and other organizations, and our riders and our support teams and such. Because it provides context for why they do it. They understand how, as you put it, you know, the hard-earned money is spent and how valuable it is. And if it motivates them to ride harder, to raise more money, to bring other friends into what we're doing, then that's a very good outcome. And as far as we're concerned, all the researchers are part of the Tour de Cure family, as well as everyone that's involved with staging the events running our central office and so on. So we're grateful to have your involvement in that. Let me leave you with one last question. I might go to Jessica and then come back to you, Matthias. You know, in this world that we're dealing with right now, you know, has your focus changed? Have you recalibrated what you're trying to do? You know, what does cancer research look like in a post-COVID world compared to where we are today? Or is there a change? Jessica?
Yeah. So as Thies mentioned at the very beginning, a lot of us researchers have a bulk amount of data that kind of sits there waiting to be analyzed and waiting to be written up for publication. In my case, I've been able to focus nearly exclusively just on doing data analysis and writing up exciting data for publication. Sometimes in the busy scenario of the lab office space with students currently interrupting you, it's quite difficult to actually just take a day and write. And so in my case, my research focus hasn't changed at all. I may not be in the lab at the moment, but I'm on the other part of things, which is writing up this research, which is essential so that you can disseminate your findings to the rest of the research community. That's how things progress. You build onto knowledge that has been generated by others. Without publishing or presenting your findings, that cannot happen. She's back. And yeah, and so
don't be distracted.
Yeah, I'll try to. She does this because she wants to climb up to your lap, Shame. So yeah, so the research itself hasn't changed. The focus definitely hasn't changed. But things are currently just looking a bit differently now. And at the moment, I haven't been doing any lab work with the exception of a few essential experiments for a few days. But also, as Thies mentioned, there's only so much you can do from home before you have to get back into the lab, continue to generate that new data. So yeah, so I would definitely need to be back relatively soon so that I can continue to generate data. When we do come back, we anticipate that we'll have quite a few issues related to post-COVID-19. Something as simple as us getting reagents that we need for our experiments, for example. Most of these come from overseas, and most stocks aren't being made and aren't being produced. And as a result, if we need something as simple as an antibody to do an immunohistochemistry stain, we might have to wait months before it can be produced and sent to us. So not only the production, but even the shipment of these items has been impaired. And then we actually expect that most of these things will increase in cost too. And so, you know, when we apply for funding, we budget a certain amount of money for different experiments and reagents. We obviously didn't consider that these prices might increase substantially as a result of a pandemic. So there might have to be adjustment of project goals and number of samples assayed or amount of assays we can perform as a result of the costs. Yeah, and at the same time, I guess we anticipate that the amount of funding that will be available in the future will be even less than it is now. And so I guess across the research community, everyone's a bit terrified about, it's already hard to get funding, the success rate is already pretty poor. If it does in fact get worse, what are we looking at? How many researchers are we looking at that are going to have to leave research because they won't be able to secure funding? Because unfortunately, without it, we cannot do any research. We cannot pursue these novel ideas. Yeah, so it's definitely an uncertain time and a scary time for most researchers. And I think until we actually get back into it, we don't really realize how much it will in fact affect us and how much it will affect the future of research. And fundraising is just one example of the many things that will definitely suffer, and the associated research will be impacted too, for sure.
I suspect you're not alone in any of those sentiments, Jessica, which is why, you know, we're trying to stay as focused as we can, even as we've had events delayed. Our view is that as soon as we can get riders back on their bikes, as soon as we can get events organized and so on, we'll do so, because we absolutely identify with the pressure and the uncertainty that you're facing right now. Matthias, did you have any observations about how research is going to be shaped?
Yeah, look, I mean, I fully agree with all what Jessica said, but I think there's kind of a positive outlook as well. And I guess for me, the positive aspect is just to see, the resilience of my colleagues, and I guess the capacity and how they can adopt to, what is admittedly much more challenging situations, and the way that we actually can be very productive, and in many ways can be more productive perhaps that we had been before. Now we all are completely comfortable, like this particular interview would show, to be, distributed all over the continent and, talking into a little camera in a laptop. Whereas probably a year ago, we all would have thought this is completely crazy. This doesn't work. We all need to fly to Sydney and, waste time, waste an entire day. So I think there are positive aspects, but without really wanting to harp back too much about funding, it is clear that funding will be more difficult to obtain this year, next year, and it might actually go on for a few more years. So some of the funding agencies have already actually cancelled the funding rounds for 2020, and I wouldn't be surprised if some of them would do that for 2021 as well. I guess just because we have been forced to be at home and to perhaps have more time to think, we also, I guess, as a community, realized how much data is actually available from all our colleagues that is freely shared on the internet, and to what extent we can design studies based on that publicly available data. I mean, when I say publicly available, it is publicly available, but it's obviously in a form that really only a specialist would understand it. But nevertheless, there's lots and lots of data that is there that doesn't necessarily require us to go into the laboratory and do analysis with all the computing power that we have these days. And I think that's probably something that many of us have probably underappreciated over the past decades or so, and just being driven by all the success in the laboratory, what you can do these days, having fancy machines to look into cells and look at individual molecules. But there is a research where actually you take advantage that other people do that, perhaps not exactly the way you would have done it, and then share the results. And so taking these results and trying to see what you can learn out of it that other people haven't thought of. I think that's probably one of the positive aspects of having gone or still going through a crisis as we're going at the moment.
No, fair enough. Thank you for those observations. And I think it provides that much more impetus, if you will, for our community to try and get back to things as quickly as we can, as we appreciate that funding is going to become increasingly challenged. And the more that we can do and the more that other cancer funding organizations can do, the better it will be. And I think we need to stay focused on that. So let me leave it at that for today. Jessica, thank you. Matthias, thank you. Jessica, thank your cat as well for joining us.
Of course,
speaking on behalf of the Tour de Cure family, we're very proud of our association with ONJ and with the medical researchers. We feel like we've adopted you, and we wish everyone at ONJ the very best at this time, and we look forward to our continued involvement with you going forward. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. It was a pleasure.